Johnny, be good or be righteous? What are we meant to be? Good people or righteous people? Many people use the words interchangeably. That if you're a good person, so you're a righteous person. If you're a righteous person, you're a good person. But as we have been learning, the words might have very different ideas. Is it good enough to be good at all times? Or do we need to become righteous? And isn't, in any case, the righteous unique souls? And perhaps we don't have the capacity to be that unique soul, to be the righteous individual? How do we know? How can we tell? Welcome to Tanya today. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zichron Kadeshim in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We conclude today chapter 14. Chapter 14 in Tanya, and one word is midas, the measure, the bottom line qualification of what it means to be good. A Beinoni, meaning always good. Always good means whatever in life you express, your actions, your speech, your communication with others, your meditated, conjugated, willful thought is always good, always following the higher soul, the higher self, the godly soul, as opposed to our natural soul slash human soul slash animal soul that is there just to be self-preserving, to be there just dedicated to oneself, and hence just doing what's comfortable for me, doing what's pleasurable for me, which is, of course, human, but not good. That's not good. It's human. We do it. It's not good. It's what's good for me, but that's not called good. If it's good for me, that means what I'm taking into consideration is what's comfortable for me, what's pleasurable for me. But that doesn't include what I was created for, what I'm needed for, and what God wants from me. It doesn't include that necessarily. Might not be part of the equation. And therefore that ain't good. So Johnny, be good. But is that sufficient? How about being righteous? So based on everything that we have learned, and just to bring that all together, we can now understand the very first teachings in chapter 1 of Tanya. Tanya begins with the words Tanya, which means it's been taught in a brisa, in the oral teachings of the Torah, called a brisa, as opposed to a mishnah. And the teachings is mashbim say, before the soul comes into this world, mashbin say, you're given an oath. In a figure of sense, it's an oath, meaning you're satiated. You're filled with the capacity. And what is the oath that you're given? Tia tzaddik, you should be righteous. Al tia rasha. And you shouldn't be wicked. So, of course, the question is, if you're righteous, obviously that means you're not wicked, right? Then you're good. So why the what's called kefil lashon, the redundant thought? Hey, you're given the power to be righteous. So obviously you're not going to be wicked. You're not going to be a rasha. How do we understand that? And furthermore, what kind of oath? What does it mean you're given an oath to be righteous? Have we not understood till now that righteousness is only in the hands of a few, that they could be indeed righteous? So is that incumbent on me? In other words, Johnny be good ain't good enough. Johnny be righteous. Oh, Johnny got in there, bud. That's not from a Hasidic melody. The Hasidic melody is Johnny, all he wants to do is, what are you doing in the market? You don't buy, you don't sell, all you do is make trouble. That's the Johnny in the Hasidic melody. Here's a different, we'll use it nonetheless. So now we can understand the repetition over here. So if you're not going to be righteous, at least don't be wicked. That's the first understanding, right? Don't be wicked. What does it mean not to be wicked? Be good. What do you mean be good? Be a Beinani. What's good? That someone takes full mastery of their life, someone who takes full mastery of their behavior, which is your life then, and every opportunity for an action, for a communication, for speech, um, through willful thought is good, is doing the godly thing. Good is godly. And doing what God needs and wants from us as an expression of the godly soul. Because not everybody can have that mastery to become righteous, so at least don't be wicked. Don't be someone who has a stain on them, which is doing something that's wrong, doing something sinful. Be good. If that's the case, then, and we do not all have the capacity for righteousness, then why are we given the oath to be righteous? We don't have the freedom necessarily to be that. And most likely we will not be that. Well, if we're not going to be that, then why give an oath? Meaning, an oath means the idea of being satiated. Your soul is satiated with the power, the, um, the empowerment of being righteous. Good question. Right. Again, just to clarify, the freedom of choice is given to all of us that we should not be wicked, that we be good. That freedom of choice, yes, in our behavior. But the freedom of choice is not given to all of us so we can be righteous. So, explains the Alter Rebbe. What this means is we have to do our part to fulfill the oath of being righteous. And what is righteous? Someone who loves God delights in God. God is the only truth and reality, and they loathe anything that's against God, that is against His will. They loathe that. So to fulfill that oath, one would take time to meditate. To meditate that you come to actually loathe something that's against God. And what's the basic thing that is against God? Is that we're pleasure seekers as an end in itself, where rather than bringing pleasure on high, rather than our pleasure being in God. So we have both sides of the coin over here, as it were, meaning to loathe and therefore meditate upon, for example, where is there's two basic human pleasures that are really become lustful pleasures, they become addictive pleasures, and they are in the realm of sexuality and the realm of food. Very natural and human to seek pleasure in a sexual union, and a permissive one of between husband and wife. For the righteous, they loathe that. Why? What do you mean? Because that's just self-directed. That is just, a pleasure seeker, which is all about you and nothing to do about God. That they loathe. They don't loathe the sexual union. No. That's actually called the Holy of Holies. I'm not saying something that the Alter Rebbe says here in Tanya, but just to add, that's called the Holy of Holies. In other words, it's a holy union. And therefore, even when it comes to sexuality, which is the most, natural thing to have pleasure for yourself. And yet the righteous will loathe that because it's all about me enjoying. Rather, for them, it is about giving the pleasure rather than having the pleasure. And that's what the mitzvah is, and that's what makes it a Holy of Holies, is that when you're giving the pleasure rather than you're seeking the pleasure. Again, just to reiterate the point, when it comes to sexuality, relations between husband and wife, in a permissive manner, having the pleasure, the righteous will loathe. Giving the pleasure makes it a Holy of Holies engagement and relationship. Because then it's about what God needs from me and what He wants from me, and it becomes something that is truly beautiful as a result. So that comes in sexuality. By the way, just parenthetically, just even think that way for a moment, whether in fact, when it comes between the relationship between husband and wife, you'll actually act that way rather than seeking your own pleasure, but just being aware of that and thinking that and meditating upon that truth. And therefore there's being loathsome, that it's loathsome, that idea, that concept of just, seeking your own pleasure in sexuality. Again, whether you will actually act that way or not, but just being aware of that, I promise you, if everybody was aware of that, and thought that way, for just again, may not even act that way, but entertain the thought that that is the ultimate truth, boy, would women not be subjugated and dehumanized and so on and so forth. Yeah, I think that they should teach that to Hamas. And you know what? Let's just teach it to ourselves. And maybe it'll trickle down, filter down. But just imagine what a kind of respect that women would have, that they're not um, looked at and objectified for their pleasure that one can have from them. This will change the world forever and for good. It's just this one idea people incorporate in their lives. And the second area where we're naturally pleasure seekers is in food. First one is sexuality. The second one's food. So here the Alter Rebbe also says that the righteous, and here we're talking about because we've been empowered to be righteous, right? As the phrase is, you're given an oath, you're given the empowerment before your soul comes into this world that you should be righteous. Now, are we in fact going to be righteous? Well, we got to fulfill that oath. How do we fulfill that oath? Think about food, and then, you know, we eat with our eyes, and it looks beautiful on the plate. But if you let that plate sit for the day and it gets moldy, then think about the food. Meditate upon the food, not the way it looks so beautiful and enticing, and therefore I want the animal soul in me is driven by a desire, by a lust, by an addiction to seek the pleasure of the food. Well, don't think about it that way. Think about it how it's moldy and it becomes disgusting, that food. Well, how's it going to look in your eyes? Disgusting. And therefore, you don't want it. You're not interested in it for its pleasure now. When you will think that, then that will also hold us, give us the capability of being like the righteous. The righteous abhor food to be as a thing in my life that just to bring me pleasure. So that's on the negative side. What else should you think to be like the righteous on the positive side? Is that you think and meditate upon God in a way that brings you to a lovingness towards Him. A lovingness. Even though that lovingness may not become you, it's okay. It might become a part of you, that you delight in God. That God is the only thing you delight. You don't delight in sexuality and in food as an end in itself. You delight in God. That's the other side of the coin. And you think about that. Meditate. In fact, you may not be that way. Well, you know what? That will be up to God if He's going to grant you that. And that you are indeed a soul of the righteous. Right? So do your part, and God will do His part whether He's going to. Or what might happen is because when you are kind of doing things that the righteous do, and even though you're not there, may become a second nature, but not your real nature. You didn't transform yourself like the righteous do, that negativity, that self-directed pleasure to God-directed pleasure and delight. But what might happen is that you'll be granted the soul level ruach of a certain righteous person that will kind of attach themselves to you. And you will kind of get something of them that is glued to you in a sense, even though it's not really you. But in any case, the bottom line is, as we conclude chapter 14, as Mashbina say, Tia tzaddik, be righteous, right? You'll fulfill at least the vow, that meaning the empowerment that is given to our soul by the fact that we at least have made an effort to abhor pleasure as an end in itself and to delight in God as an end in itself. That's like, wow. That notion, again, just thinking it, we're not going to be it, right? So, Johnny, be good. At least be good. That's for sure. And you can be righteous. Righteous, meaning that we can at least entertain the thought, meditate upon it, whether it'll become us or whether it will become will be granted a soul of the righteous that will connect with us on that level that they have, and what they have will be somewhat that we have in our lives. Bottom line is that this notion, share with the world. We all need to share this, well, first and foremost with ourselves. But if this was shared with the world, this notion, wow, women would be respected. We would deal with, relationships in a very different, wholesome and healthy way. And we'll have a healthy way to deal with food. The over 50% of obesity in America would be cut in half overnight because we would have a healthy relationship with food. In half. No question about it. All right. Questions, comments? Oh, Rabbi Foyle, thank you for joining. Vilma is here. Who else is joining us? Diane, David and Liba, El Zega. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Thank you for joining. Jane and Mordechai. John is with us. Oh, Nancy and Rena, Daphne, Czar, Tim, Maria. Oh, I see now question. Are righteous people following asceticism? No. I mean, in a sense, yes. But not for the sake of asceticism. For the sake of serving God. So it's ascetic in the sense that if you're delighting in God, so you're not, your world is not, a materialistic world for its own sake. So you are, you're dealing with the material world, but the material world becomes a tool for something higher and greater and divine. So do you eat? You eat, right? But you eat to live. You eat to connect to Hashem. So I wouldn't call it, in a sense, it can be perceived that way, but it's not that. Why is it that some just crave to know God, but others are not interested at all? June asks. That's a good question. Even if we're not righteous, some people have much more a soulful attunement to something greater than themselves, to the divine, and others struggle more. And the truth is, in the end, it's about the struggle. So even if you do, even if you do have more of a lofty natural inclination to know God. Um, and the struggle will be you know, where the growth is. Why would God, asked Bob, the loving words, tell Abraham to kill his son, and has gone. Okay. Uh, okay. Seems like you know a lot, Bob, and you don't want to hear. I think you don't want to hear answers. I think you just would like to hear yourself. Um, and yeah, we'll deal with it. Um, God didn't tell Abraham to kill his son. He told him to bring him on the mountain and to bring an offering. It was understood, he said in such a way that it would be a test that would he bring his son. He had no intention that that's what would happen, but just the intention, are we going to do what God wants, or we do what we want? And that's just as simple. There's much more to that, but we'll leave it at that. Okay. I don't see any other questions, unless anything on Instagram. Let's say hello to Eliza in Florida. We have Rachel in South Carolina. Koy is with us, and Marilyn, Marlene, and I'm missing. Oh, there's a question here. Kill the animal soul or dominate it? So the Beinoni dominates the animal soul. The righteous person has transformed it, killed it, and transformed it. So to speak. Killed its nature. Its nature is animal soul, self-preservation. Self-preservation, the bottom line means it's all about me, right? That's the bottom line when it comes to self-preservation, right? When you have a fear for your life, to preserve your life, what's happening is you're just thinking about yourself and how you can preserve yourself. So that's in a physical sense when you have a fear for your life, but then there's also fear emotionally for your life, right? That you fear you've been triggered, and you have that produced a fear in you, and that someone said something that maybe that's no, not maybe, but it's hurtful and painful, and therefore you want to protect yourself, right? So it's all about self. That's the animal soul. Okay, amazing. Thank you. ARKV. Okay, folks. Conversation will continue. You know when? Tomorrow for Tanya. We have Rambam coming up. The laws of murder and preserving life. I am Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you for Chabad Zichron Kadeshim in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have an amazing, wonderful day, and thank you all for joining.